Hi, and welcome back. My name is Tanya, and you're listening to Spiritually Connected with Tanya Lee. Today, we have a great guest on tap, Mr. Jay Rooke. He happens to be a dear friend of mine. He's also a personal development coach, helping entrepreneurs harmonize their business, personal, and spiritual paths. He's the owner of the podcast, No Pain and No Gain: How to Dissolve Your Ego and Start to Usher in Your Highest Self. There is no judgment either way. We believe everyone has a right to their own beliefs. Let's welcome in Jay Rooke. Jay.
Woohoo! Super happy to be here. Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah, good. Ooh, I like it. Okay, let's waste no time so let me be very clear here. How this is working is normally I have a psychic on, full-on psychic medium, whatever that looks like. And so today we're having Jay on. So Jay is not typically a psychic medium, and in the frame of reference that we would call it, Jay is a personal development coach. So I appreciate that aspect. And I want to get the flip side to that. Jay also works with his clients to create a spirituality, or to help them tap into their spirituality in a different way, which expands our context for spiritually connected. So I love that. So there's no judgment either way. I love this. Everyone has a right to their own beliefs. And let's start out, Jay. Have you ever had a psychic reading?
I have, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
quite a few times.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, that just gets us started. You know what? I actually don't know some of these questions, so I'm really excited to ask them for you.
Nice.
What are your thoughts about psychic mediums?
I think it's an interesting way to access other forms of wisdom or feedback. And, I think where folks, especially going back to that judgment line, get hung up on things is making whatever the psychic says be the end all and be all of truth. It can oftentimes also just be a muse that allows you to see a different truth for yourself, and in the end just becomes equally as effective as if the original line was truth with a capital T.
Oh, I like that. That just rolls off your tongue like it's, butter. So it's like you've been practicing it. I believe in that. I believe in that as well. And I believe in divine will.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I call it. So I love that perspective, and I love that openness of it. Now, I've seen dead people. Everybody knows this. My question for you is, have you ever had a spiritual experience? Now I talk about dead people and seeing them. It can be a range of gamut. So if I ask this question, have you ever had a spiritual experience? Please, by all means, it's your spiritual experience, not mine. So
Sure. Yeah, so yes to both fronts. Yes to psychic experiences, and yes to spiritual experiences. I'd say the psychic ones have been much less frequent or less tapped into by me, and the spiritual ones come a little bit more naturally.
Good. Are you open to talking about any of them?
Sure. Yeah, of course. This makes sense. I was about to say my earliest memory of the psychic goes back to childhood, and kind of before we messed everything up and reprogrammed ourselves. And so I distinctly remember, being 5 or 6 or whatever, and being on a swing set, and I got a message that was someone's taking a photo of you. And I turned around, and there was somebody taking a photo. And so those types of interesting things, where I fell asleep driving on the highway one night. And as I was coming into a turn, my wife showed up in a dream and said, "Hey, it's time to wake up." And I woke up before the corner. Those types of little things, or I think the bigger point is that I'm trying to make here is that when we begin to lean into the psychic or spiritual aspects, we're more used to those huge pops that we see on TV, like, oh my God, the train's going to go this way and I shouldn't be on it, or, make up whatever these huge revelations and epiphanies are. And I think while those certainly do exist, much more often that language speaks more in whispers and hints than it is big billboards of do this, do that.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. And I have that with a lot of, so when I mentor or teach people, they're waiting for that. You're exactly right. They're waiting for that big, huge, oh my gosh moment. And they're going, it hasn't come yet. So,
Right.
So I must not be psychic. And so
Yes.
I love that you talk about that, because I could talk about it all day long, and I'm psychic, I'm medium. So they don't necessarily believe me per se, or just hope for more. It has to
Right.
be big experience.
And we also all have our own antennae, and so someone might work, numbers speak to them. Another person might be animals. Another person might be, I can't put my finger on it, but this room feels wrong to me. I'm going to walk out of it, and those types of things. And so I think it's learning, to your point, I very much believe that we all have some degree of this within ourselves that we can either cultivate more of or deregulate and downshift. And it's learning to find which sort of language is yours, and starting to play with that while just leaving the others alone.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it a lot. You talked a little bit. I want to hammer this in. So the swing set, was that your earliest moment, or did you have an earlier one?
That's the earliest one I remember. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And then how about your one of your most recent?
Recent. Boy, I'm gonna have to cut out some editing here of dead space. I'm trying to think of a recent one that stands out for me. Yes, so I recently connected with these shamans in Mongolia and had a session with them via Zoom, which I think is hilarious that we're in this modern time where I can do Zoom with a shaman on the other side of the world.
Love that.
And so I was asking some kind of questions around like, hey, where next, and what should I be focusing on, and kind of things around how to be, sort of embrace masculine energy a little bit more and drive with things, and being, I think I had drifted a little too far to the feminine receptive side of things. And so he goes, well, do you bet? And I'm like, no, not really. And he's like, not at all. I'm like, no. He's like, not even horses. And so I'm just like, no. And so he had this like very, like, how are you even a man if you're not betting angle about it that was sort of prodding me. And so he's like, well, why not? And I said, well, the first time I had bet in this big golf pool and then in a horsing race, I won everything, came in first both times. And so I just assumed that was the way that betting worked, and then bet a bunch more times and lost all those times. And so stopped doing it. And so he goes, oh, you failed to stop remembering how to believe in yourself. How interesting. And I'm
Oh,
like, screw you, shaman, screw you. And so what happens the next day, ding, in my email box, this golf pool that I had won several years ago that I'd totally forgotten about pops back in. And I'm like, all right, shaman, I'm going to do this. And so ended up betting, but instead of, using logic and what I know of like the physical world to be like, all right, this guy's good at this, and this one was good in this last tournament. I went through and made my top 8 picks or whatever it was based on how the letters of the players' names spoke to me. And I used to be a golf junkie. I haven't watched it in years, and ended up coming in 6th out of like 120 people. So fun stuff like that.
I see. I love that. That's Hey, I had no idea that you were in touch with shamans too. So for those people that don't know what a shaman is, are you open to letting people know what that is?
Yeah, and I think it's such a fluid definition. One of the things, I had a woman on my podcast several episodes ago, and we were talking about her moniker that was that she was a modern day shaman, and we were talking about part of the challenge with using the word shaman in Western culture is that we don't have a cultural equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I can say, hey, I'm the chief, or I'm the head medicine man, we can all be like, all right, yeah, we've got that in our culture. But when we go to shaman, we don't necessarily have that as much in the Western culture. And so my best attempt to articulate it would be something around an individual that has learned a different level of cognition than we have and interacts with other planes and energy of the world that we might not be seeing, and is very much in relation to that, oftentimes lives sort of outside or separate from the tribe, or does not as much participate in regular daily life, and has a more revered status as almost like a priest level type of role.
I love that.
Would that do it, or should you add to that? I don't know if it's incomplete or not.
No, and that sounds really great. The only piece I'm going to add to that, and you're right about the Western culture and not having equivalent, what I'm going to add to that, and based in Canada, because you're in the States, based in Canada, we lean towards more of, and I know I'm going to hear lots of shamans giving me heck about this. My experience, let me put it that way. My experience with the shamans around here is they don't have to be indigenous. However, they lean more towards the indigenous experiences or the indigenous aspect, or they
Agreed.
pull from the indigenous roots of it. So one of my um, former mentors, or one of my, well, she's still a mentor, um, absolutely love her. She is white as a ghost, just like I am,
Yeah.
and the blonde hair to go with it. And she's a fantastic and individual. And meeting her, that she is definitely on a higher plane.
Yeah.
She does not call herself a psychic medium, although I easily would, because she does connect. She has, however, taken years and years of shaman training. She has been to every possible place around the world that works with shamans, deals with shamans, and now in Canada, she teaches shamanism, which is absolutely beautiful, pulling from the indigenous roots,
Yes.
and that's the baseline of where she's at. So that's the only thing I would add to that,
Yeah.
for sure. Otherwise, it's a
With
great
it.
description. I love that. Good. Let's talk about have you ever had dreams where someone who has passed has come to visit you?
A little less so in the past. I've had dogs that have passed come to visit at times, but I've had a lot of what I'm going to refer to as prior life dreams. I tend to have lots of World War II recurring nightmares, lots of war nightmares, and I've never been in the service or seen combat.
Wow, I didn't know that. So,
Yeah.
and for those of you who don't know, that I love dealing in past life regression. It's my jam. I
Hmm.
absolutely love it. So I actually didn't know that about you. So I would
Yeah.
love to. I do past life regressions all the time. I do group sessions every other month or whatever that looks like. I'd love to invite you to one of the sessions. I mean, hey, it's complimentary on me for that
That'd be
one for
fun.
you, if you'd be open to that.
Totally. I would very much be open to that.
And at the very end, it like I said, it's a group on Zoom, and if and it please know that it does work through the hypnosis aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so you will probably go into hypnosis.
Yeah.
I know that you meditate, so that is part of it. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. And you don't have to share at the end. Some people do, and they want clarity around
Sure.
what they're feeling and stuff. So feel free to share or not, whatever that looks.
Fun. Yes.
Love that.
I'm in.
Okay, I'll invite them to that. That's
Thank you.
fantastic. Ooh, I love it. Now, we'll get to your spiritual beliefs in just a second. What I want um, to understand a little bit more about you is, have you always been spiritual, or has there been times where you've turned it off, or didn't think you were, or
Yeah. Uh, it's an interesting question because it has been more of a dynamic connection in my life, or a fluid thing where, times it's been more and times it's been less. I would say leaned into it somewhere around early to mid teenage years when I started getting into meditation and reading about and learning some of these things. And then as university and law school and being a lawyer kicked in, I think I went very sort of horizontal physical plane, and just did a lot more worky type stuff. Um, and I think, as is often the case with folks that revisit their spirituality or start to tap into it for the first time, it occurred when life was just no longer working for me and things weren't feeling good, and I wasn't happy with how the experience of being alive felt or moving through the day. And I was like, there's got to be some other ways to start to shift how this feels inside and shift my experience of the world. And so I put that roughly later 20s, early 30s to till now, where I'd say I'm probably leaning into this about as much as I ever have before.
oh, I love that. And your spiritual beliefs, what are they?
Yeah, it's so tough to. I think spiritual is another one of those words that the lexicon's no longer working for, because most of us then go immediately to either religious or God based. And so I'm going to throw my spiritual beliefs as, hey, how do I relate, or what were my beliefs about the stuff that we can't see
Mhm.
necessarily? And so for me, that's a lot more around I know this is so cliche, but like love is the answer that fixes just about everything. And so if we're starting with hardcore beliefs, using that as one of the main tenets for, okay, this is probably the best way to start addressing this. And I think it's this movement from moving out of ego, moving out of quantifying, moving out of logic and adding and tinkering and analyzing, and more. It's not that those things don't exist in my world. It's that they exist with more of a union around how am I feeling about this? Am I trying to, what are a lot of the qualities of my thought process? I think that I start to pay attention to. So am I trying to gain things right now? Am I trying to reach in the jar and pull out more cookies? Am I trying to do this for status or approval? Or is this fear-based or impatient? And so if I can clean any of those up, I know this sounds more like I'm talking about emotional intelligence and spirituality, but I notice that those are the hooks that pull me out of spirituality first. And then when I can check those and get awareness around it, then I can tap into more, all right, what's the Zen response for this? Hey, if I can't solve something in my head right now, what if I go out in nature and take a walk? One of the things I'll do, I've got a pretty sweet Zen garden in my backyard, and I'll occasionally go out and just kind of like walking stations of the cross. I'll go like plant to plant, spend a few minutes meditating or sitting in front of each one and saying, what's the message here? Or what is your message here? And those types of things giving me access points to greater creativity that I'll call divine creativity or a higher level creativity that allow me to start to configure how I'm thinking or feeling about a situation in a way that's more robust and complete, holistic than just my linear mind.
Man, I like that. And I like the ritual too. I think that's important.
Thank you. Yeah.
If there was somebody out there listening, so you did mention that you were a lawyer.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. This lawyer, hotshot lawyer in New York, and leaning into the more brainiac aspect of it. What brought you back? Sorry, let me phrase that. What brought you back to the spirituality aspect of it?
Yeah. It feels calmer. So I'm going to describe the difference, I guess, as between a super hyper yip dog and a nice big dog that's like cool and chill and laying at your feet. And so what I noticed was just I couldn't shut the mind aspect off, and it's constant data grabbing and solving, and without the influence or threading of the other side woven into all of that logic, it just had me, I'll keep with the dog analogy, like a dog chasing its tail all the time, and I wasn't necessarily making better decisions, and I was learning that I can't outthink a lot of situations, and that it wasn't feeling good. And so it started with the desire to just feel better, which usually included things like meditation at first, or starting to read about other viewpoints, or um, larger movements, let's call it like Zen and Buddhism and things of that nature, and realizing, oh wow, that actually kind of grabbed my brainiac side of the mind at first and was like, oh, this is interesting. And then the more I got interested and leaned into it, the more things would start to show up and happen in a more effective way. And I'd say that the super important point for those that are just starting to lean into this is to have the awareness going on where you can start to look for more of the clues and not make it be about, hey, I got a hit today around something, so I'm going to go and act on it. And then if it doesn't work out, being like, oh, all this stuff is BS or wrong. Don't set yourself up for those failures, and recognizing at the start of this process, your brainiac, ego, etc., is still going to have its claws pretty well in this process. And so don't let that sort of dilute it or toxify it.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I wanted to jump in a couple of times. I'm so excited about that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There's even moments where I'm out of alignment. Like life happens, my personal life comes in,
Right.
everything happens in such a way, a series of things is out of alignment. And to me, it's coming back to the basics, coming back to, for me, it's knowing when I'm out of alignment and feeling it. I mean, I've had this chance to practice for years, in a decade or two. For you, how do you know when you're out of alignment? or do you understand it that way? So I understand it as being out of alignment. Do you know it as out of alignment, or what do you call it?
Yeah, definitely out of alignment. And again, I'll go back to, it just doesn't feel good to be either in my body or in my head. But also, grace falls out, ease falls out. It feels like there's a lot more efforting. One of the things that I'll start to note is lots of things will go wrong, like micro things. And so what I mean by that is, the calendar scheduling appointment for you and I to have coffee, that was when I was like, let's pretend I was being, in my strategic mind, and, oh, Tanya's got this great network, so I'm going to reach out to her for coffee, and this is going to get me in front of 500 people, and then we've got a 20% open rate, and back, and she's above my like pay grade or whatever. Just I'm super excited to get this and make it happen. And then all of a sudden, the emails don't go through, then the calendar link doesn't work, then there's a flat tire, then there's something else. And I'm just like, oh, why is this going this way? And then at other times, noticing, and it's most often when I'm not in work mode, so either play, relaxation, nature, something like that, and ding, and looking at the phone, and that email that I was hoping for just came in and fell in my lap. So more, it feels like more magic. A lot's more like, oh, can you believe it, that blank just occurred? It's a lot more serendipity, a lot more randomly running into that perfect contact, or I'm late for some reason, and that lateness then produces another positive effect. So those are the things that feel more like being in alignment. And the final thing I'll say is that alignment feels, when I'm in it, feels like a pure expression of myself, and is tends to be more fun. And the non-alignment feels like shame, I'm in trouble, and I need to do XYZ activity in order to get to value or acceptability.
Love that. Yeah, for sure. Mine feels guilt. I
Yep.
feel I feel guilt and the resistance. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, there's resistance everywhere. So my students all know I surrender so hard.
Yes.
And even just the act of saying that, saying, I surrender to what is, I surrender to the universe, I surrender. And even just saying that tends to reframe me and put me back into, okay, I know we all have divine, destiny and all that kind of stuff, and we have divine will, and I want to stay in alignment with that.
Right.
It's impossible to stay in alignment with it all the time. I just, because we're human,
Yep.
spiritual beings having human experience, and ego, like you had said. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
so I want to challenge. Are you open to a challenge? Are you open to
Let's do
playing
it.
with me just a little bit? Cool.
Yeah.
So I I believe, and I preach this. I'm not a preacher, but I preach this. I believe everybody is born psychic. What are your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
around that?
Yes, I'm going to go with you on that. Yes.
Okay. So quick, clear, yes, I like this. And so my thought is that, or I'll let you know that every time I have a psychic pop on, I always ask them. So I send them a series of questions ahead of time, and I say, "Here's basically what we're going to talk about, similar to how I'd done it for you." And I says, "Please know that we may go off topic quite a bit, and I let the conversation take it wherever it needs to, and I learn interesting information that way." The other thing I do is I send them 4 names, 3 or 4 names, and I simply say, if you're feeling drawn to these names, these are the names I'm going to ask if you're just open to a tidbit or two or a sentence or two about each person. And sometimes they give them to me and they say, hey, you know what? Angel is this, and she feels like she's struggling, and this pops up. So what I'm curious about this. So you don't identify as a psychic medium, however, or as a psychic. However, are you open to playing with me just a little if I give you, let's say, 3 names?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, I love this. Ooh, this is fun.
We
All
sit
right.
right here.
So
Good.
here's the thing. I did not do this ahead of time. So this is not this is us just totally off the cuff. Let me just be clear. Jade does not have these people. I'm going to pull them out. So these are my inner circle people. I love them dearly. So you guys would have heard some of these names before, but Jay has not. And so Jay, the first name I'm going to come up with, and I'm making these up right now, thinking about first name that pops in my head, Stacy. Let's go with Stacy.
Okay. So I'm going to go that Stacy is struggling for her self-esteem and self-view to catch up with where she's actually at right now. And there's a grief point at some point in her trajectory that sort of disconnected her from that. And I feel like either reaching back to something around father or something around a healing that connects her to big rocks or large energy that brings that back in would be needed. There's just like a little bit of a cleanup that needs to go on around that.
Oh man, I love that. You know what? She's gonna love that too. That's good. That's good. And it's 100% accurate. So let's do this again. Let's try. Let's say the name Lori. Lori.
Lori's trying too hard. It feels like Lori's trying to make this be about proving something and needs a little more connection with inner child and play and grace.
100%. Absolutely.
Put the sergeant down.
Ooh, good. Like that. The next one I have is Mary.
Getting Mary needs to mix it up, kind of jazz hands, glamour shots type of thing, leather, stiletto, whatever that direction is, that things have gotten too proper, formal, etc., and just painting way outside the lines and being, fireworks on the 4th of July type of thing, and a little bit of flair and reintroducing sexy and getting mojo back.
You know what? 100%. She does everything for everybody else. So I love that. I think she's going to like that too. Are you open to one more?
Let's do it.
Okay. Valerie.
Okay. Something around moving from handsmaid to the princess. What's that? What I'm getting is, she's kind of taking or viewing herself too simply to an old pair of slippers or comfortable blue jeans, or, hey, I'm just a person, and would benefit from reformulating herself as almost more fairy princess. I'm thinking of like some of those children's cartoon characters that are just more magical and spiritual. I'm not thinking of their names right now, but you can think about those winged ones that have the special powers type of stuff is what I'm shooting for.
I love that. Yes, 100%. Man, I 100% agree with every single one of those. I love that. And I love that we're able to tap into that. Each one, I can see the references that you pop up. So I'm going to let them know what you said. They'll hear it on the podcast. And I'd love to, I'll send you an update on what that looks like. And I'll also share it with everybody down below. Because I'll get their feedback too and what their thought process on that. Are you open to that?
Love that.
Oh, I love this. This is great. We might just do this more often. I like this. Okay, so Jay, since you are, actually, I have a question. Do you have my book? So this book just came out and I am totally plugging it. So The Last Breath just came out recently. It's myself along with 47 others. So there's 48 authors on here. We each talk about a beautiful story that we have, true stories of the mediumship, the afterlife, and messages from heaven. So I know initially, Jay, you sent me a congratulations on making international bestseller. Do you have this book?
I don't, but I would love a copy.
You know what? Can I send it to you? No charge. Yeah. This is on me. This is my gift for you coming on show. Are you in?
Hey, I'm in. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you this week. That's great. I love this. Perfect. So Jay, one last parting thought. Can you tell me, I love that the shaman talked to you about the masculine, being more masculine.
Yeah.
For anybody else that is a man, and I know a lot of women are in this, industry. I also have a lot of male psychics. I also taught quite a few male psychics or males as well. Can you talk it from a male perspective of what that looks like? What, like, ego gets in the way, and any advice?
Yeah, I think it's, so I guess I can only describe my own process with it, but it was going away from the masculine to learn more of the feminine, only to go too far in that direction and then come back to learn how to embrace the, let's call it more healthy masculinity. So in kind of sort of modern terms, it might have been learning how to identify and shed some of the toxic masculinity to then celebrate, understand value of the divine feminine, weave that in, and now it's kind of like bringing it all together around that. So, an example would be for those that are spiritually curious, I would say starting to kind of kiss frogs and date all of these philosophies and see which ones speak to you and feel right to you. So, there's aspects of Zen that and Buddhism that really, really work for me. But then there's and I love anything animal spirits related. Like, so a lot of those animal totems and spirit totems and things of that nature, I think are great access points as well. And it's just a matter of finding, what speaks to you. And so the language of the tiger that comes to you is equally valid in my world as, hey, somebody had a burning bush and had a revelation from God type of thing. They all fit into larger stories. Um, and so what was interesting actually also in that call with the Mongolian shaman is he asked if I meditated, and I said yes, and he said, all right, what's it like when you meditate? And I talked about generally trying to sort of clear the cache and get all the thoughts out and get back to center and quiet and nothingness. And he's like, yeah, that's cool and worth doing at times. He's like, but for you, I feel like the more effective meditation right now is learning how to pull all your focus and power to one thing and hold it and intention it during your meditation versus being more passive and receptive. And so I'm almost starting to learn how to use your mind and energy and thoughts to will and manifest what you're wanting, but in a cleanness that wasn't the prior masculine way of like force and make it to happen and do and beat and conquer and take. It was more like, no, this is what I want, and I'm really going to hold the line. This is going to happen on the masculine side, and on the feminine side, I'm going to accept that I can draw and bring this in without needing any additional extra effort.
Good, good. How often do you meditate?
Again, varies, and you can probably follow an exact curve that chases my alignment or lack thereof in it. I would say, daily, but when it's more than daily, I tend to be doing better. So for me, like call it 10 to 15 minute, really slow things down and get everything out and get centered and focused per day is helpful. And then a 5-minute one somewhere else, typically mid-afternoon, is really helpful for me to just reset. That's usually the point of the day where I'm starting to have fatigue and feel overwhelmed and a little more anxious. And so for me, that's the bring it back home, hold on to things one that I'm not always as good at keeping up on. And then like I'll say one final thought on that is that there's different modalities, for lack of a better word. So some mornings I find that for me, meditation means pulling tarot cards or doing some journaling or something along those lines, or drawing or creating. There's different levels of meditation for all of us as well. Right on.
Okay, wait, you do tarot cards? I had no idea. What kind?
Yes. So going back to this whole Zen thing. So I've had a few tarot readings in the past, and then, oh, how funny. I was actually working with this woman who's calls herself a shaman in San Francisco 10-ish years ago. And she had recommended this Osho Zen tarot deck. And so it tends to bring in principles more of Zen philosophy than it does tarot. So predictive or what's here in the now, but similar stuff. And so maybe 8 months ago or so, I remembered that she had me bought that and dug it out of my bookcase, and I've been doing it almost daily since then.
Love that. Okay, so I just happen to have a deck of cards here. Are you open to
Yeah.
me giving you a card?
Let's do this. Yes, we love
Okay.
it.
I love this. Woohoo. Totally off the cuff. This is not.
Is this the first tarot pulling on the show?
It is actually. Yes. This is awesome. Okay. So this is for Jay. So just for those people that at home, just letting you know what I'm doing, just shuffling cards, and I'm just putting an intention in. I just say Jay's name, and I put an intention into the cards, and then Spirit just lets me know when I should stop shuffling. And the card that pull ups for Jay, Jay, here's the card. It says to choose wisely. Choose wisely. So there is so many different paths. There's so many different hands that you could be doing. There's so many different things that you could be doing. And it's a matter of what's right, what's wrong. There is, so the number that pulls up is 7. So that's not actually what's sticking out to me. What's sticking out to me is the 2 birds up at the very top. And that was the first number that came to me, was a 2. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things on the go, let's drop them back down to 2 and ask if I really should be doing all these 7. So this comes from someone who likes to do 10 things at once, me, and have 100 things. So running a podcast, doing a coaching summit, writing a book, writing another book, creating my own tarot cards, like limitless. So, and so I get this, and this card actually probably is good for me too. Yes. And so don't do 7 things, do 2 right now.
So super timely card, because I'm actually in the process of aggressively cutting out over commitments, over obligations, simplifying, narrowing things down. And one of the things that the shaman said was, hey, start to pay attention to look at the sky, look at the clouds, look at the stars, look at things and say, okay, why are there 2 clouds here versus 1? Or what does it mean when the sun's over here and the cloud's moving this way to me right now? So in doing one of those meditations and watching the sky the other night, the message that came through really clearly is to go where the gold shines. And it was this gold shining light. And so the card that you're showing points towards the gold, and the birds flying towards it. And then 2 birds flew towards where the gold were in my dreams. This is a cool recurring theme showing up in the world.
Love it. What I always say is, once, I don't believe in coincidence. So they say once, okay, twice, okay, 3rd time, they're hitting you on the head. So pay attention.
Yes, totally.
So it is 2 gold birds. They are beautiful birds. I don't even know what kind of birds they are. They're just big and beautiful. Yes. If I was to describe, it's a person on a bridge. They look like their hands are out in, receiving mode. And then there's a whole bunch of hands sticking out from that saying, go this way, don't do that, do this, stop, go, in a lot of just simply hand gestures. The words at the bottom is choose wisely. The frame of it is in green. So the green is usually tied to do with nature as well. And this deck here is my normal go-to deck, and it is by John Holland, and it is the Psychic Tarot deck.
Cool.
That's my go-to. It's always also what I give all my students when they come through my classes as well. I love that card, and I love that you let me do that. So I appreciate you being open to that. That's amazing, and that's exciting. Jay, any final thoughts on somebody that wants to get into this or wants to, I love how you said spiritually curious. And so any last thoughts on what somebody should do?
Yeah, I would say don't let your perfectionism creep in. That might serve you in other areas of kind of the work-life world. And to be patient and curious and open with all of it. And so you're not looking for answers as right and wrong as we are in the other parts of the world, so much as looking for connectivity, clues, and whispers. And so thinking about the why behind the why one is even starting to go down that path and getting clear on that, and then bringing that intention through the process. And the final thing I'll say is it's got to be consistent on some level, whatever it is. You can't just sort of tap into psychic or intuition once a year when you're at the craps table or something like that. It's a process, and it's a cultivation of learning how to hold a connection and keep a relationship. And so just like any other relationship, it needs love and servicing and attention if you're going to get what you want out of it.
I love that. Jay, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, guys wanted to coach with you, whatever that looks like, how do they get a hold of you?
jayrooke.com, JAYROOKE.com is the easiest way. And I've got all my contact info there and form submissions. And that's where my podcast lives as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Jay. This was fun.
Super fun. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for all the listeners for tuning in today.
Thank you, guys.